This is a Media Lab podcast.
Oh man, Kyle, why is it so cold? Turn up the heat, man. It's freezing.
No. It helps me focus. I have to focus. That witch from last week has done some sort of hex on me and has made these runes just appear all around the room, and I have to decipher them somehow.
What are you doing to decipher the runes? How do you decipher runes?
Listen, it's a whole big problem. A/B testing is required. There's footnotes galore. It's a whole big thing. Just rest assured that there is a very clear plot reason why this has to happen.
Did you open all your cabinet doors just now?
Let me just read out this first one that I'm pretty sure is correct, that I have cracked. I see red pebble? That can't be right. In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
I see dead people. Oh no, I'm Dave. Yeah.
And I'm the machine.
This is a podcast where a sentient machine forces us to watch movies in order for it to prevent from initiating the apocalypse. Although we do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. Today, we get to watch the movie The Sixth Sense.
Ooh.
You know the accident up there?
Yeah.
Someone got hurt.
They did?
A lady. She broke her neck.
Oh my god, but you can see her?
Yes.
Where is she?
Standing next to my window.
Baby, why are you shaking? Cole, what's wrong?
Did you ever talk to your mom about how things are?
I don't tell her things.
Why not?
Because she doesn't look at me like everybody else, and I don't want her to. I don't want her to know.
Know what?
I see dead people walking around like regular people.
I don't see anything. Are you sure they're there?
Dave, I would find it remarkable if you didn't have a relationship with this movie, because you did exist in the 1990s. But what is your relationship with this movie?
Wow. Yeah, I loved this. I loved this movie when it came out. It was one of those movies where you leave the theater with your mouth agape, as we used to say in the olden times. Yeah, the twists, the turns, and I think there's a reason why M. Night Shyamalan became a household name in a sense. I mean, this movie built, like so many movies we watched this year, built some genre-defining moments. Fascinating.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, about some of the movies that we've already watched here this season. Like you have The Matrix, which was like this huge, like cultural zeitgeist movie and really influenced science fiction and really action filmmaking going forward. Red Pill, Blue Pill became, just part of the conversation. We have Fight Club, rule number 1, you don't talk about Fight Club. And then you have The Sixth Sense, which, yes, became super famous because of the twist that happens at the end. But I see dead people is still something people quote.
We also had Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which became the trope that Star Wars was no longer going to be a reliable franchise.
And Still Crazy was a film that was released, supposedly.
I can't believe how in 1999 alone, there was literally at least those three, and I'm sure there's probably even more that are out there that really just changed the culture.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And I think you brought up in a previous episode that this was the beginning of actually talented child actors, which,
yes.
I've been thinking about since you said that. And I just watched Enola Holmes on Netflix. And then I just saw...
Do you get paid by Netflix?
Netflix, get us some... Although none of these, very few of these have been on Netflix. So Netflix, we don't need your money because it doesn't give us anything of value. I just saw her on, I don't know, Jimmy Fallon or something, and she's all grown up. And I feel like she might be another. Actually, you know what? Natalie Portman probably is the start of talented child actors.
I mean, there definitely were some throughout the years, right? Like you can go back in time and have like Tatum O'Neal won a best supporting actress for Paper Moon in the 70s. Oh my gosh, what's her name for The Piano had won just a few years before this. She had become Rogue in the X-Men
Oh, right,
films.
Anna Paquin.
Adam Paquin.
Right.
If it wasn't the start, it was at the beginning here at the very least of like talented child actors. Like to the extent now where if there's a bad child performance, that is what sticks out. Like the good performances don't really stick out. And I think part of that is because, you know, as more and more people want to go into the acting profession, you basically have like acting coaches that will start teaching your kid at like 2 or 3 years old now. So it's like they've already been in like dance and tap and voice lessons from the time that they could barely walk. So that when they do become 6 or 7, they're all almost like kind of like mini pros.
That was my big mistake is I didn't start tapping. Yeah, I should have been tapping the whole time.
You should have gotten your son. Start tapping. Tappa.
Oh, he taps. No, he doesn't tap. I think, too, we talked just quickly about, just to stress this point, I don't know why, it has nothing to do with anything, but about how casting gets to change and put reasonably age-appropriate actors for these coming-of-age films instead of watching 90210 and everyone's 40. And
yeah, I know.
Yeah. Which is now a trope.
The teen shows up.
Yeah, it's funny.
I mean,
it's
it was
comedy.
The teens. I mean, even today, I guess that still kind of happens on TV. But yeah, it's, especially in the 90s where your teen shows are filled with people in, at best, their mid-20s, but probably early 30s is what they were when they were being a teenager.
Yeah. You smoking the reefer? No, that's not correct.
Yeah, with the receding hairlines. Yeah.
I mean, that basically describes this podcast.
So this is a bonkers anecdote I'm about to tell you, okay? Because talking about reefer, I don't know if my dad was on something or what was going on in the backstory to this. All I know is that I have a very concrete remembrance of how I watched The Sixth Sense for the very first time. I woke up on a Saturday morning with my dad laughing hysterically. He had been working a night shift and had somehow rented 2 movies when he came back to the house. One of them was the movie Fargo, which had come out a couple years before this, and the second one was The Sixth Sense. He was like, both people at work have told me I have to watch both of these films, but he says like the Fargo is very much an R-rated movie, and I was going to watch it first just to see but I have to show you this scene. And he showed me the wood chipper scene and like laughed hysterically.
Oh my God.
So that was my first introduction to Fargo, number 1, was just out of context completely, the wood chipper scene. And then he's like, let's go watch this movie. And then we watched The Sixth Sense.
Wow.
So I watched The Sixth Sense basically right after I saw the wood chipper scene of Fargo. Watched The Sixth Sense, mind blown, loved the movie, thought it was great. So that would have been probably late 1999, early 2000. I don't know what month or anything that it was, but a very specific moment. 2 things. I mean, definitely M. Night Shyamalan became, this like household name right after that. Like the twist was like, no, this big thing. And I think that hampered his career. It was just this really well-crafted movie. I think Bruce Willis was still a kind of a big name at that point.
He hadn't tarnished his legacy yet.
Yeah, exactly. And then we had this like phenomenal talent in Haley Joel Osment. And I really did think from this movie that I was like, oh, I'm at the beginning of like 2 people's like lengthy, amazing careers with like M. Night and Haley Joel Osment. It's like there's nothing but like better things that are going to come from these people.
Yeah. That didn't
and I don't know if that's actually happened for either of them, unfortunately.
Watch out for their comebacks in 2022.
Hypothetically, if we had already watched this movie, I brought this point up and Helen brought up this interesting thing about child actors, where what makes them famous, their like childlike appearance doesn't, grow up. Because Haley Joel Osment kind of actually looks like just a larger version of his child. Like in a sense, we all do, but he's still got that childlike thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. When you see something who are really young, I think Jodie Foster might be the only one who escaped that. To a degree. Maybe, but even then, that was like teenager. She was already a teenager by that time. She wasn't like a small kid. So I off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone who's like literally been like very small child to like adult and had like this really lengthy career. I would love, though, if it came full circle and like Haley Joel Osment had like this amazing run of like being in prestige films in the very early part of his career, because he was like young Forrest Gump. He was in this movie. That in his like late years, like when he's getting into his 70s or 80s, he's like this grizzled old man. Then he starts getting all these beautiful roles. Yeah. And that's when he wins his Oscar after like 80 years of being in the business. All right. Well, let's do this. Let me go and thank some sponsors. And then when we return, we'll be talking about The Sixth Sense. Hey everyone, just Kyle breaking into the episode once again to talk to you about some of the people who help make this show continue to go. You know, we've been doing this series on spooky films here in the last few weeks here on this show, so hopefully you're not too scared to help out the show by going and rating and reviewing us on iTunes or whatever podcast player it is that you listen to us in. And honestly, the biggest thing you can do to help us out at this point is that if you like this show, tell other people about it, whether that's on social media, in person, if you're allowed to see people right now. Just tell people. Just tell people. Anyways, Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This week we are sponsored by the Alberta Forest Products Association. They have prepared a special message.
Alberta's forests matter to all of us. That's why Alberta's forest industry works to keep them sustainable now and for future generations. By planning 200 years ahead, helping control the spread of fire and disease, and planting and nurturing 2 trees for every 1 harvested, we keep our forests standing strong. To learn more about how our forests take care of us and how we take care of them, visit loveabforests.com.
This episode is also brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. So in Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from. Park Power has low overhead, and chances are you'll save money if you switch. You can find out how much money you could save by visiting parkpower.ca and plugging your numbers into the Alberta Energy Savings Calculator. If you decide to switch, it's easy. Nothing changes about your service, only the price you pay. Learn more at parkpower.ca. All right, Dave. What do you think? In this like non-spoilery section, how do you view this movie now?
I was flabbergasted. Is that still a word that kids use these? I was flabbergasted.
Well, kids don't use it, but you can definitely use it.
No, I loved it. I was moved. In fact, at the end, I think I cried. We'll talk about that in the spoiler section. I don't know if it's spoiler, but we forgot to mention at the beginning, Toni Collette was amazing in this movie too.
Yeah, she's so good. Really my first introduction to Toni Collette, and I think she is completely, still to this day, slept on. I think besides this role, she's never been nominated for an Academy Award, which is like mind-blowing to me.
I don't know. What's the Academy? That's your Academy. No,
that's my Academy. It's only a few thousand of the peers of the entertainment industry, David.
Your peers. Hey, Martin. No, so
hey, Marty.
You know what I thought was interesting about watching this time is knowing the spoiler. You have this context where, I guess, knowing where it's going to go, I appreciated all the subtle nods to the spoiler throughout the film. And I remember kind of, because I've watched this movie more than once, feeling that, but it was great because I haven't watched this movie in a long time. So going through the paces, knowing in the back of the mind what this is real, quote unquote, really about, was really great. I thought it gave more dimensionality instead of ruining the viewing experience. If that's the parlance.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to talk about this movie without discussing the twist that happens, because that's what everyone wants to talk about. And I really think how this movie was framed. I'm sure like the initial audiences who went into this movie who did not know that was going to happen would have had like just an amazing experience of having no context whatsoever. I think after that first weekend though, like it kind of slipped out like, hey, there's a big thing that happens at the end. So people were anticipating it. I think you're right. I think the movie is so smart in that even if you know there's a twist coming up, it doesn't really show its hand. And then when it's revealed, it's like, oh, like all of that makes sense. It's all perfect sense.
What are you talking about?
It's something we were discussing before we pushed record here today, is the fact that This twists inside of movies, I mean, have happened for a long time, but I think there's an even bigger push for a lot of films, especially in the horror genre, to be like, there has to be like this big revelation at the end that's going to completely reframe what you think. And my opinion is that when movies try so hard to be a twist at the end, they somewhat fail becoming just a good movie. And this movie is a good movie with or without that twist at the end. I think it does add some dimensionality to it. I think it's more thematically resonant with that twist. And even M. Night, I think, as he went on, felt that he had to match that or exceed that to his detriment, because sometimes it would have the adverse effect where it's like, oh, well, that kind of makes everything that happened before this a little bit dumb instead of like actually additive to it. But I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, I agree. I think what makes this one interesting is the amount of planning and intentionality, and that perfect measure where his storyboarding and his concept actually translates onto screen. And I think that a lot of other projects, and this may not be reflective of the writer or the director, this may actually as well reflect on, as we always bag on, the production companies or the executives who get to greenlight this shit or order resequencing, etc. But it is very difficult, I think, to weave a story visually, A, without giving something away, but B, while giving enough of a nod that you have to have some type of subliminal or subconscious sense that something's going to change. Because sometimes movies go too dumb the other way, where the twist is kind of like, oh, well, fuck you. Like...
right.
You know,
yeah.
And then you know what I hate? When they resequence at the end to show you all the stuff that happened that you didn't see on screen. I'm trying to remember which movies are like that. Sadly, the one that pops up in my head is Wild Things. I can't believe I watched that piece of shit. But I think Soderbergh had one. I watched sort of a crime movie where at the end there's a 5-minute montage of things that weren't on the screen. I mean, you're like, well, guess what? The characters were doing this in the background. Like, how the fuck would I know that?
Whereas in this movie, again, they show you everything.
Yeah.
They're not withholding the information from you. Your brain is just interpreting it to mean something when it actually means something else. So when they do those slight, like, going back in time, it's like, well, wait a second. Like, they were having a discussion. Like, oh, no, they actually weren't. I just filled in the blanks when they actually were not. That wasn't what was happening.
Yeah, that was my favorite part on watching it, knowing what was quote unquote really happening. It was fascinating. I found each of those little interactions riveting. I wanted to see if they would break or make a mistake in the camera work or the interaction with the characters or some of the background stuff, and it's perfect because I was like, I know what's happening and I still believe. My brain's still fighting. Like, no, they're sitting there, they're looking at each other, and you're like, oh, are they? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I think the other big thing is that this is actually also about something. This is about loss and grief, and actually I think fear and courage. I think it has some really interesting things to say about all of those.
You haven't left your bedroom in a week and a half because you saw a mouse. What do you know about courage?
I'm so glad we rewatched this. This is probably I'm going to say the 4th time I've probably seen this movie in my life, I think. But something I definitely want to keep revisiting because I had a great time. So, let's do this. So that we can actually get into spoilers and talk about this more fully, let's do some background information about The Sixth Sense. So The Sixth Sense was released on August 6th, 1999, and a bunch of movies came out that day. So there was the updated Thomas Crown Affair, directed by John McTiernan, written by Leslie Dixon and Kurt Wimmer, starring Pierce Brosnan, Rene Russo, and Dennis Leary.
No.
There was also 2 other movies that we have talked about on this show were released on this same day. The first was Mystery Men, directed by Kinka Usher, written by Bob Burden and Neil Cuthbert, starring Hank Azaria, Janine Garofalo, William H. Macy, Greg Kinnear, Jeffrey Rush, and Ben Stiller. And then the third was The Iron Giant, directed by Brad Bird, written by Brad Bird and Tim McCanleys, starring Vin Diesel, Eli Marienthal, Jennifer Aniston, and Harry Connick Jr. So this was a stuffed day for things to come out on.
Yeah, this is the thing that broke those other 2 movies in half.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason why those other movies didn't do as well. It's because this was just a juggernaut. So it is critically acclaimed. It's currently rated 8.1 on IMDb, 64 on Metacritic, 86% based on 158 critics over on Rotten Tomatoes. And the users of Rotten Tomatoes, that's 1,036,664 of them, have it at 90%. It's available on DVD or Blu-ray, and you can buy or rent it on iTunes. It is not available on our favorite application, Stars.
Come on,
What's up with that,
Stars.
Stars?
Come on, Stars.
We're going to such a roll with that one.
We don't need your sponsorship money anymore. You've failed us. No, we do need your sponsorship money. Please call us back. Please call us
Thank you for your $6 app and your quality streaming platform. Its budget was $40 million. It opened to $26 million. And if I remember correctly, I just want to point this out. I think this was on like the documentary that was part of the VHS that was released that happened like, after the movie was over. This could also be like what they said. I don't know. But it's one of the few movies who made more money on its second weekend than on its first weekend. Because the vast majority of movies drop at least 30% in its second weekend. But domestically, it would go on to make $293 million. Internationally, it would make another $379 million, bringing it up to a total of $672 million. With inflation, this movie made $1.04 billion, is what this would have made.
I just want to bring up again, not out of bitterness at all. What was that Julia Roberts movie that was made for $60 million? Runaway Bride?
That was Runaway Bride.
Just leave it at that.
Sounds pretty bitter to me.
I'm just bringing that up as a point of information. This was the second highest grossing film of 1999.
Was it Star Wars Episode 1?
Yeah.
The Phantom Menace?
It would made like $970 something million. Its plot description on IMDb is: a boy who communicates with spirits seeks the help of a disheartened child psychologist. A part of me, I get like the majority of people know that already. A part of me hates the fact that they spoil that fact, because the movie actually does not tell you that until about 25 minutes into the movie. That's what the thing is, that he is seeing ghosts.
Yeah.
But it's in the trailer. It's like literally in the trailer. I know that they say that, but still.
I would have preferred if they said disemboweled child psychiatrist, right?
Yeah. Well, it's true. It stars Bruce Willis as Malcolm Crowe, Haley Joel Osment as Cole Sear, and Toni Collette as Lynn Sear. I know we've already kind of discussed them a little bit, but anything you want to say about those actors?
No, hypothetically, I may have been cleaning my house instead of researching anything for this.
How dare you?
Yeah. Priorities.
Bruce Willis, has had an extensive career. He, in the early 90s, was still on Moonlighting, I think, on television.
Yeah.
But
no, wasn't it the 80s and then Die Hard?
It may have been the late 80s, yeah. Anyways, Die Hard is like the big thing.
Greatest Christmas movie of all time.
But love Die Hard. Think Die Hard is great. But been in a bunch of other things. Armageddon, of course. He would have been in by this already. What's hilarious about Bruce Willis, a lot of his movies I don't think are very good. But the ones that are great are phenomenal. It seems like he vastly goes either way. I think why he's so good in The Fifth Element or this movie where there's fantastical things going off is that he is so low key and so mumbly everyday dude, dad guy, that it makes the fantastical that goes around him even more so, because he's just I'm regular guy dude.
Regular guy dude is the spec script I'm writing for CBS right now.
That's why I love Die Hard so much, because it came out in, this is a famous thing, but it came out in the era of the Schwarzenegger-Stallone superhero male. And he gets his ass whipped at every moment in that thing. It's more about perseverance than the everyday cop.
Feet all bloody, bruised,
although
and beaten.
He jumped out into an elevator shaft, so he's not me. Well, I would have just.
The unfortunate part about that is that by the end of the Die Hard franchise, and I'm including 4, 5, and 6, or is there only 5? No, there's 6. Is that he becomes that superhero? Sure. Unfortunately, he becomes the guy who can do anything and never die, which is unfortunate, because that is what the core of Die Hard was for me. Is real guy getting beat up but still continuing to go on.
I was just thinking it's an interesting parallel to Tom Hanks that we talked about needing an Oscar for P-Face, because they kind of.
Well, we haven't actually talked about that movie yet, Dave. That might be next week.
What do we live stream?
We did, but we did these out of order. So I'm just saying if that was to happen that way.
Why would I know? Why did we? Shit. Well, we're still talking about Blair Witch, so now you got me all twisted up.
You're both such professionals.
All right. Well, then why don't we say it this way? Presuming we're going to talk about Tom Hanks It is
Yeah.
interesting that they both have similar beginnings with this sort of comedic beats. And then
Yeah.
you see one of them evolve into a multifaceted dramatic comedy and somewhat action actor who can, win Oscars potentially for any acting
Right.
position he's in. For example, should we watch him ever pee? He probably deserves an Oscar for the kind of face he could make. Whereas Bruce Willis, not to bag on him personally, but you can see there's a limit.
But he knows what that limit is too. Like
Does
he's not
he?
trying to
He asks for a lot of money
overextend
these
himself.
days. Yeah, he writes himself
True.
out of a lot of casting.
But it's not. Yeah, but it's not like he's being like, cast me in Castaway. I'm gonna be.
As far as we know, we don't know. We don't know what he's auditioning for. But
just imagining him though in like an English drama just like kills me to
Yeah,
think
awesome.
about Bruce Willis trying
Yeah.
to do that.
but that comedy bit shows. I think that's what makes him the everyman. He's got a little bit of that cartoonishness about him. But you're right. There's. I used to think it was an intentional deadpan, understated thing. I think that's just who he is. It feels like.
And then Haley Joel Osment, I mean, had like this really cool career going up. I mean, I think we mentioned already was the young Forrest Gump. He was the young not young Forrest Gump. He was Forrest Gump's child in that movie. It was in this movie. He starred in AI, which I love that movie, except for the last 20 minutes. But that's a phenomenal movie. Was in some other like high profile things and has continued to work. Like if you go into his IMDb, it's not like he doesn't still appear in stuff, but I personally, I don't think I've seen him in a movie in 15 years. Like, I can't even tell you something that I've seen him in as an adult.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember why I know what he looks like as an adult, but it was either a TV show as a teacher or a dad, or like some kind of indie. I don't know, it was not I Heart Huckabees, but something like that where it was,
Right.
almost like an art indie movie. And it wasn't that he's bad. It's just hard to separate because he still has, child face. Which it's so judgmental, but it's true. He looks almost exactly the same.
Except with a beard.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he had a beard in the role. But
Oh, in that one?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
He has a beard now. The last time I saw
I wish I could grow a beard. I would have a beard.
I had a girlfriend beard in high school. But then we have Toni Collette, who I am like the biggest Toni Collette fan. Love her. This is probably the first thing I saw her in. But the last couple of years, she has been like knocking it out of the park. Being in stuff like Knives Out. She was in, that horror film.
I don't watch horror. Yeah, I'm above it.
I know.
I'm too good for horror. So
Well, the guy who directed Midsommar did like a film the year before, and I cannot remember what the heck that movie is called, but she was phenomenal in that. There's like this literally a woman losing her mind, and I mean it, like losing her mind. She's so good, and she can go back and forth between being like comedic and dramatic and everything in between. So the world should love Toni Collette way more than I think it already does. And then written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, who, just to paint you a picture, had already written and directed the movies Praying for Anger and Wide Awake. Do you know either of those movies?
no.
I've not seen either of them. I just know that one of them, someone explained the plot to one of these before. I can't remember which one it is, but it has Rosie O'Donnell and a kid in it. And the kid is suing God or something like that. It's some wild tale. Anyways, one of those, that's what the plot
Who won?
is about.
Who won?
Audiences.
In the same year as Sixth Sense came out, he wrote the film Stuart Little.
Oh.
It's just a little fun fact. But then this would skyrocket him after this movie made so much money. He would then follow this up with Unbreakable, which I am a fan of. I like Unbreakable. Signs, which is, I think, 75% a good movie. The Village, which I actively hated, watching it in the theaters. Lady in the Water, which I did not watch. And The Happening, which is considered one of the worst movies of all time. He then made two other disasters, which was The Last Airbender, which is like the less said about that movie, the better. Go and watch the cartoon, because it's vastly superior. And then he came back with After Earth, which was also a pretty big box office and critical disaster.
Is that the one with Will and Jaden?
Will
Oh, I
and
didn't know
Jaden
that
Smith.
was a M. Night Shyamalan movie. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
It was.
Wow.
I think what happened, like from The Last Airbender onward, he kind of has now gone away with trying to write twists, and I think that might be a benefit. That being said, he returned with The Visit, which was a horror film that was actually very well reviewed. Like a lot of people liked that movie. And then he recently made Split and Glass and is currently filming the film Old. Have you seen the movie Split at all?
No, it's been on my watch list.
Okay.
But I have.
Do you know the big thing in that movie?
The big thing, as in, what's his face?
What's revealed at the end of that movie?
Yeah, like the
do you know what the twist?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that, and that was not marketed for that film when it came out. And so when I was listening to another film podcast, they were like, "You need to go and see this film, and we're not going to tell you what happens at the end. We're going to talk around it, but like, go and watch this." And then I watched them like, "What?" And like that blew my mind too. Unfortunately, Glass, the follow-up kind of sequel to that movie, is not good. Anyways, just saying.
All right. Judgmental. That's fine. Yeah, that's why you're here.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan in general. I think that he may have gotten so much success so quickly, even though he had made a couple films beforehand, that he felt compelled, like I said, to just write twists rather than writing good movies. That's my feeling.
I'll throw this out there. I saw this part because I had to turn it off because it got a little too personal, but there was a YouTube video asking why Hilary Swank no longer is capable of making good movies. And I wonder if this similar thing is true. It's a bit of a lightning in the bottle theory, where this event happened. It like, 600 and whatever million dollars. So we have this assumption that this guy's going to be the greatest film director, the next generation of Kubrick.
Well, I think, it's almost like the next generation of Tarantino almost, who became like a household name for a very specific type of movie and could generate box office.
And then it didn't happen.
So that is kind of our background information on that. Let's get back into talking about The Sixth Sense. And yes, from this point on, we're going to be revealing stuff that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, spoiling this 21-year-old movie, I should point out. So I think the time has well and truly passed for people to be surprised by this. I want to start there. Like, I want to know, back in 1999, when that first was revealed to you versus now, does it hit differently now? Or what are your feelings on the twist? I should just be clear of Bruce Willis actually being a ghost for the majority of this film.
Oh, I totally didn't get that.
Well, I missed
it. Yeah, this is actually a prequel to the movie Ghost. So
that's why there's so much pottery in it.
So much pottery. They're just covered in pottery the entire time.
You know, I will say this, which I think so I loved watching it again, knowing that he is, I suppose you could say, there, but not really there. The final reveal actually fell flat for me because by then I had started thinking Bruce Willis is not actually a particularly good actor. It's not that he's bad in this movie, but compared to Haley Joel and to Toni Collette and
right, I agree with that.
She's kind of not famous, but that British actress who's his wife. I mean, she's fantastic in it, and he starts getting overshadowed by the end, where even Misha Barton, is that Gossip Girl or whatever, when she's puking herself, and I'm just like, that's incredible.
She was in the OC.
Oh, right, OC.
Dave.
Some show I didn't like that Helen loves, and I even that, right? You're watching it, it's so visceral, and she's actually like disgustingly good in it. So all of the character actors are great, and by the end, when it comes to the moment, that tender moment where he's saying goodbye, I was like, I don't care. Like, just roll credits. I get it. I got it.
Just ascend to heaven already. God.
I will kind of disagree with you. I mean, I don't know if this movie, as it's shot, works without him being a ghost. I mean, that's the whole tension, especially rewatching it.
No, yeah.
But I think what you mean is...
I mean, that's what it's leading up to. I think more to the point of what I'm trying to say there is that the movie doesn't hinge on that fact. Technically, you could have revealed that fact at the beginning and it still would have been resonant, because the true story of this movie is Toni Collette and Haley Joel Osment reconnecting with one another. Like, that's really what the base of this movie is. And the Bruce Willis character and his wife is like bookends to me. Like, it's like they're at the beginning and the end to wrap everything up. But the main point in the rest of that is Haley Joel Osment coming to terms with what his power is and figuring out what to do.
I also think that undercurrent of that age-old idea of a ghost and purgatory and having unfinished business is fascinating.
Do you know where that comes from?
Historically,
by any chance?
No, I don't remember.
Because historically because it was definitely out before this movie came out, that idea that ghosts were really around for unfinished business.
Oh, yeah, that's
so I don't know if that's a
old
Dickensian thing or what, but...
No, I mean, I was, my first thought was Dante, but I don't know. I've never researched it. I just assume it's like all of the great things like holding your breath in graveyards and all that kind of shit. Whatever their source is originally, but
whatever it is, and again, I guess I don't know like the deep history of ghost fiction, but for me at least, this is the one time where that concept gets put out, and the ghosts are not there just to scare the people, right? In a lot of those stories, it's ghosts are there. Protagonist finally figures out it's a ghost, and it's like, okay, what is their unfinished business? And let me go and figure that out and do it. And here, it's like, ghosts are here. Okay, we're going to deal with that by just going and asking them, hey, what do I need to do to help you out? That's a little bit of a different take on that story, where it's them going out and lending out that hand rather than being scared, running away, figuring it out, and then it kind of deals with itself.
Yeah, and I think that there are great moral suggestions there about the balance and unfinished business and all this kind of stuff, living the right life. It is interesting that the one depiction of that close circle is a murder mystery in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And speaking of kind of like not the scare, I mean, with the exception of the abused wife in the kitchen, the ghosts are generally depicted as horror, like gory, broken, disgusting murder people. But they are depicted in a sort of almost an empathetic way, where they're shown to be suffering and needing help in some way, which I liked better than the other horror movie shticks. Of the whole point is to make you wet yourself.
I like my humans wet.
I thought it was actually creepier than watching that other garbage movie we watched. I have a funny story about that, so I don't know what the sequence of release is.
No, we last week we watched The Blair Witch.
Okay, so at the elevator at my psychiatrist's place for social distancing, there are only allowed 3 people in the elevator, but they put footprints to show, and they all face towards the corner of the elevators. And I got in the elevator, and 2 women were actually sitting there staring at the corner.
Shit. Holy shit.
I almost took a picture, and then I thought, like, to send to you, and I was like, I don't know. It feels like a bit of, even as a photographer, I was like, it feels a little bit of an invasion of privacy to watch these 2 women look away from the horror of my company in the elevator.
You might say that the Blair Witch is still culturally irrelevant. But I think you're right. I think that the ghosts around him are meant to be horrific and terrifying. And we can definitely put ourselves inside like this 7-year-old boy who's just trying to live his life and is also being bullied at school and has to contend with that and, trying to deal with his mom. And I mean, this is maybe a recurring theme that you're going to hear from me, and especially having lived through 2020. My thought watching this movie now in this year is like, once again, it is a movie that maybe we didn't learn enough from. And maybe I'm asking too much from my films, but it's like the wrap up of this movie is like, let's be kind and reach out to somebody and help them rather than be terrified and push them away. So when we're confronted with terror or something that makes us uncomfortable, our initial response is yes, to run away or to push it away from us, rather than approaching and being like, how can I help you? What do you need from me? And I mean, like, I'm not doing that either. I'm just saying, isn't it an interesting way to approach that problem?
We'd be better at doing that if Stars would call us back and give us more money. No,
yeah.
I think it's...
Then I could help people from my high-rise apartment.
I like from the penthouse. I think that's I agree with you, and I think that's counterbalanced also by the reflection of how cruel humanity is. Mm-hmm. All of those broken souls who either die violently or through some type of malice or suffering. They show real events, like the courtyard hanging of people. If we were going to watch a movie that involved corporal punishment next, this concept of hanging people inside a judiciary building is fascinating. Yeah. I mean, they weren't talking about this idea of a ghost because they're a witch and they have evil intent. These are, whether they're innocent real or not, people. It's just, it's about the sort of visceral acts that human beings are capable of. The abused wife who's self-harming, like that shit's, it's dark, but it's not scare horror because you have that thought, like, this is stuff that really happens. Have I acknowledged it? And then Haley Joel Osment becomes that figure where the moment he acknowledges it, he can find some peace, like you said, in an action that in his world he can directly resolve some of these issues. It is weird to think what the rest of his life will be.
Well, yeah. I mean, I want to be very clear. I do not want a sequel to this movie, like in any fashion. I don't want a sequel to this movie, but it is an interesting, I don't know, exercise to kind of write that movie in your head because there's not really money in like solving ghost stories in your spare time. No. So
as we saw in Ghost, right? Whoopi Goldberg's not doing that great.
So make some pottery, I guess, on the side. So what does he do? I could foresee him becoming a child psychologist like the Bruce Willis character eventually and doing this while he can. My other thought is that he goes and tries to find other people like him because he is not the first. We're led to believe that Johnny Wahlberg was also...
He's such a Marvel guy. So he's going to assemble a team of superheroes that all have...
No. I'm just saying so that he knows what's going on and he knows how to help them, right? So he can go through that. But
and the apocalypse.
Hey, the apocalypse is my thing.
I think the seventh sense is probably virtual sex suits. You know, when you get...
I thought that was called virtuosity.
I think you're right. I mean, I hope, unless you're hearing the grapevine, that they're actually talking about sequeling it.
Maybe, who knows? Like as M. Night likes to do, sometimes he likes to film things and just release them without letting them know how they intersect with other stories. So maybe that's what Old is about. Maybe Old is a Sixth Sense sequel that...
Yeah, I was going to quickly ask you, do you think, because the rumor, because I didn't watch Split or Glass, but they're supposed to be in the same universe as Unbreakable, and it just makes me wonder...
Spoiler.
If they're all supposed to be all together.
The thing is that's what makes Split so special to me, is that it was not marketed that way. It was like, this is a new horror film by M. Night, and then at the very, very, very end, I mean, the very, very end...
Oh, it's actually in the movie. Oh, I don't know. I thought it was fan service.
It pans over, and there's something that happens that is very explicitly tells you.
Well, way to spoil that, Kyle.
Well...
Jerk.
I asked you. So the other big thing, too, is that what I noticed by looking at old reviews from this movie... And even nowadays, if you go onto like Letterboxd and that sort of thing, I see this time and time again in the write-ups, which is like, Haley Joel Osment, so good as a kid actor. Haley Joel Osment, so good of a kid's performance. And I straight up don't think you need that qualifier. I think this is a phenomenal performance, and he also happens to be a kid. I don't think you have to put in that fact that he's a child. To your point, he holds his own with Toni Collette. Those scenes are my favorite in the movie. It's just him and her. And the part that made me cry is the end with the car.
Yeah.
With them talking about it, like literally tears coming out of my eyes when it's like talking about like how grandma comes and visits me and blah, blah, blah. And like all this type of stuff. And it's like, geez, Louise, like that is a real conversation. And those are two real people having that conversation. The way that Toni Collette breaks down, by the way, is like, yeah. Well, and then you go back to the Bruce Willis character, like kind of monotone with his wife.
Yeah.
But I mean,
that's what I mean, though, right? It's like that. I don't know. The part with Toni Collette, when you're in the editing room, you got. I'm sure they had a debate. They must have been looking at it and be like, "This is a better way to finish this movie," but it fucks up the drama,
the reveal.
Yeah, of the reveal. The other dimension of this is watching it as a parent. I think.
Yeah.
Because Emerson is around. I mean, I'm sure Haley Joel Osment at this point is probably 10, but probably. The parallel of their developmental stage makes this very difficult to watch too. I mean, from the parent-child relationship to having to deal with a kid that, kids say things before they understand the sort of impact and structure of language. So sometimes like he'll wake up and he'll talk about how his tummy hurts so much, and I'm just like, oh my God, you have COVID. And then it turns out like he just has to take a shit or is hungry or something. So when it starts, and I'm just imagining if I had a child who seemed so schizophrenic or whatever, like just so beyond human comprehension, with the scrawling and the pictures of murders and shit. And then watching Toni Collette, whether it's scripted or just how she deals with that as an actress, it's incredible. Her brave mom face and supporting her son, and then immediately before or after seeing her just distraught. And, as you know, like I'm not a single parent, but I can't even imagine the additional stress. So adding that dramatic element, whether, again, it was intentional by design, by script, it really got me in that. And again, hypothetically, if we had watched this, not right now, but yesterday, I was finished the movie. I was driving with Helen, and as I was describing, because she refused to watch the movie, the last scene, I started crying again because it's just hard to even describe and kind of quote the script at that point without getting completely in that moment.
Yeah, like it's so beautiful. And like you say, it's that lightning in the bottle where all these people kind of came together at the perfect moment, because I think I kept returning to Shyamalan movies wanting that emotion brought back to me. And I could get the mood and the director, because I think he's actually a very good director as far as like framing things goes and using shadow and other things expertly. It's getting those performances out of the people that he works with that I kept wanting to come back to.
I wonder if, because he's so successful, his casting in the production companies had trouble. I mean, it's hard to work, I imagine, with Mel Gibson, right? It's hard to. I mean, I like what's the alien lady's name?
Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton. I mean, she's a talent, but she's so eccentric that I imagine even in real life. So you get these big name or very unique people to play these really weird roles. It must be very difficult as a director to just put your own stamp and direction, because these are very structured concepts. Like The Sixth Sense doesn't work if you have anything loose in it. It'll fall flat very, very quickly. Anyways, to your original point.
Was there a point?
Haley Joel Osment in the movie, again, parlance, is a revelation. He's so good in everything he does, from the fear to the, what I really liked was the stressed laughing when he's just kind of finding Bruce Willis amusing, but you still see like he plays that middle round. I mean, maybe that's just his face, but he's great in that. And then to find out that he didn't win an Oscar because of Michael Caine. Not that we've watched
that movie either, but I doubt very much that Michael Caine puts a better performance in. But maybe we'll be proven wrong if and when we see that.
But just the context. I mean, this is like maybe an 8 or 10-year-old kid who full range, right? Mm-hmm. Navigates such an intricate and intellectual movie on a blockbuster scale. What do you need? What do you need, Kyle, to win an Oscar? What does it take, man? This is your world. What does it take?
Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, God.
That's basically probably what it's the actual
I'm sorry
reason.
I brought that up, because there might be some gross history there too. So we'll leave that alone.
Two last things. Number one, I do want to talk about the theme that I saw prevalent in this movie. And I think that what it eventually brings up is that crossing the threshold between like fear and courage. Courage being, of course, like you are still fearful, but you do the thing anyways, because whether you think it's the right thing to do or you're trying to push past that for the greater good.
The greater
Haley
good.
Joel Osment, of course, stays fearful for the most of this movie until Bruce Willis helps him cross that threshold and approach that, and which allows him to open up to his mother. And I think that is the thing with Bruce Willis too, subtly, is like he's fearful of his marriage and stuff going away, not realizing that he's actually already passed away. And then coming with the courage, like, okay, I'm going to let you go because it's better to let you go and I can move on rather than, forcing you to feel regretful for the entire rest of your life. So I don't know. I think that there's some really powerful stuff there just as a theme.
I'll just quickly point my finger at you in the patriarchal sense. He's not letting her go.
Ooh, snap.
He's letting go, asshole. No, it suddenly reminded me of the scene in Fight Club, right? Just let go. I don't know if it's the 90s. I think this is just a general sort of post-World War II existentialist sort of philosophical idea of just coming to terms with the shit that's in front of you. And stop running to fear, stop running to rote. Don't just go through your life in a cycle where as long as I do X, Y, and Z, everything will be fine, because it's not. You got to go and dig into it. You try not to become a space monkey and set the world on fire, but in this case, becoming an exorcist seems to work for him. He seems more peaceful as an exorcist than as a bully child. Just a quick note on parenting too. In the modern day, those two little fuckers that lock him in that closet would go to jail. That scene.
Well, I was going to say, talk about like the fact that their parents don't
They
ream
just
them out.
there. Oh my God.
I wanted to push them down the stairs.
I was freaking out, man. And it wasn't even PC. I was just sitting there, I'm like, how is this a thing? Like, there are bullies. I mean, they're not even laughing. That was an interesting part. Is like they're just as frightened as soon as it happens. But oh my God, Kyle, that's another Oscar-winning moment. The petrified. I mean, unless he's claustrophobic and they actually locked him in method acting, the shrill shrieking. That was scarier than Blair Witch. That part just gave me the real heebs, man. The heebs and the jeebs.
We need to discuss that there are actually some really funny moments that happen in this movie. I think low key Bruce Willis actually does really good at comedy.
Sure, yeah.
Because again, he's like so deadpan. But literally my absolute favorite joke is when Bruce Willis does that like little magic trick thing with like the penny, and then Haley Joel Osment just does a beat and it's like, I didn't know you were funny.
Yeah.
that's what that scene is. I think that's so funny. And then super relevant to today, the Cats joke that they make in this movie is phenomenal. About you haven't seen the musical Cats? It's like, what's Cats?
Oh my God.
Now everyone knows what Cats is, but back then I knew what Cats was and knew it was awful. So
that was pretty funny too. And made
20,
it more relevant.
20 years to understand that joke for the wider population.
Maybe that's why they made the movie, right? Because they were like,
Yeah.
it's a 20-year anniversary of Sixth Sense. Let's remind
Yeah,
people
let's do
why
it.
this joke still works.
Relevant.
We're done here.
All right, so the machine has told us that we need to wrap up. So I guess we should ask that age-old question that we often ask on this show. Do you think that this holds up, and is it culturally relevant still?
Yeah, I think it holds up. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that it avoids all of those little things like requiring bygone technologies or all this kind of stuff that would alter a person's context of how this movie works. I think the concept of ghosts and exorcism is timeless. I think the twist still works. So if you have, like, I've been seeing this thing on YouTube with first time kids have watched, I don't know, like a Queen performance or something.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you're,
Which, by the way, I don't believe.
no, they're all
but
total
go
bullshit.
on.
But like if
Yeah.
you're 15, like when Emerson turns, let's say, however old he is, that he can handle a movie like this, he's going to flip out. And I think even if we have VR, everything, whatever the future of filmmaking is,
Yeah.
you put something like this on, and I think it holds great impact.
I still think it actually looks great.
Yeah.
Like talking about the 90s look, like some of the movies we've gone back to, it's like, ooh, this looks old, like it looks dated. And I don't really feel it for this movie. I don't know why necessarily. Maybe it's just because they've crushed the black so much, so it just looks conscious, like a lot of movies nowadays kind of do anyways. But I just think it doesn't feel old like some of the movies we've watched from 1999.
I think it's also because, like I kind of brought up, they don't rely on visual pieces of technology.
That's true.
Like you don't spend time. I mean, there's one scene on the street where he chases off a car, but the car itself is not important. So you don't get fixated that this is whatever, like a 1999 or like
Right.
or like we watched Ghost Dog and they have the flip out DVD. CD players, like little points like that where you're like, oh, what is this, right? There's no rotary phones. There's not, everything seems to happen within the dialogue and the interactions of people, which makes the movie more timeless. And I don't know, maybe I'm old manning it, but I think everybody, if you haven't seen it, and what the fuck's wrong with you, and just go watch it. And I think forever, future generations of young people will find great entertainment, and if they're nerds like us, pick at this. There's a lot of great layers in this. So I think it holds up very fantastically well. Yeah.
Even in another 20 years, I think people are still going to be talking about The Sixth Sense, and I don't know if I can say that for a lot of the other movies that we've watched this year. There's going to be a few of those ones that continue through time, like there always are, but this is one of them that's, I think, is going to be high up there.
I think that's why at the beginning, when we talked about this genre defining, there's 3 movies that are on it, like Matrix, Fight Club, Sixth Sense.
And this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as we liked so many of the movies of the 99, I mean, they're timeless. You could watch The Matrix now with the same thing, right? With like a kid, and they'll still get blown away. This is that movie. I think it's just, it's great. This is why M. Night will always get at least $40 million to make movies. It could be bombs the rest of his life, and he will always get $40 million as a minimum budget.
Yeah.
He should remake Runaway Bride, right? And that movie needed a twist.
The twist
man.
is that the audience was dead the entire time. I should just point out to everyone here, I should just point out to everyone that if you want to give us your impressions of this movie or anything that we talk about, you can definitely send us an email at kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com. You can also hit us up either on our Instagram or Twitter, which is at KDVSTM. And if you want to check out our entire ratings that we've been doing this entire season, you can go to our Letterboxd page, which is letterboxd.com/KDVSTM, which is what we're about to do now. Because, Dave, we need to rate this movie out of 5. So, out of 5 total points, what would you give this movie?
I think the movie is a 5, but I'm leaning towards going down to a 4.5 just because by the end I was struggling with Bruce. I actually did feel like the final reveal scene kind of brought it down a little bit. I just wiped my eyes, and my nose crying about the Toni Collette, Haley Joel Osment scene, and then to watch Bruce Willis sort of spend 5 minutes bumping things in a room.
Where I come from, that's called third base.
Yeah, I think I'll have to settle for a 4.5 or like 4.75. I don't know, 4.9. But
it's so close.
Yeah.
I am giving it a 5 out of 5. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I don't mind saying that. I still think it holds up, even with that Bruce Willis stuff at the end. That being said, Dave, that does mean that we have a bit of a tie, and hilariously, the other two it's tied with. You rated 5 and I rated 4.5, so we have to figure this out. So it's going to be going into our top 5 no matter what. But the two films that it's tied with are Fight Club and Galaxy Quest.
Ooh.
So for you, is this above Fight Club, under Fight Club, or under both of them? Under both Fight Club and Galaxy Quest?
I would watch Fight Club and Galaxy Quest again before I watch Sixth Sense. This is probably why I gave it 4.5. So I think I would put those other two movies ahead of it personally. Where do you fall?
Well, I would actually rate it above both of those two, technically. I gave 4.5 to both of them, so I like it just a little bit better. That being said, let's split the difference here then, in that case. Let's leave Fight Club above it, and we'll put Sixth Sense in between these two.
Sandwich it.
Just to...
Yeah. Make it the cream-filled center of that Oreo cookie.
That means that entering our list at the number 4 position is The Sixth Sense. Can't wait to see what we're reviewing here next. So let's find that out here right now. I'm going to push this little button.
It's going to be a shock. We haven't talked about it yet.
Oh, yeah, we have definitely not talked about this yet. Definitely have not talked about this one yet. And I have a feeling, just because I'm a nerd about this sort of type of thing, I think the machine is making us go through the Best Picture nominees here of 1999, because Sixth Sense was nominated. And this film, The Green Mile, is also something that was nominated. When's the last time you watched The Green Mile, Dave?
It's been a while. I can't remember much about this movie, so it'll be great to revisit it. Yeah, in the sequence in which we planned on watching these films.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. It's been a while since I've seen any this performance. So it's a long movie though, Dave. It's 3 hours. Like I don't know if it's going to be able to justify its length or not, but I guess we'll find out next week.
Yeah, that episode will be particularly long, waiting for us to watch it while we live stream and watch this movie together. 3 hours. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be a big one.
I guess it is pretty cold in here. I actually am going to make some soup here for you. Just don't look at the special ingredient I like to pour into this.
I'm ready to communicate with you now.
I like my humans wet.